Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today Fantasy Flight revealed the next core set for Star Wars Destiny, entitled Star Wars Legacies. They announced two new starter sets that are coming along with this core set. There is a new die symbol, a new card type entitled Plots, and a few various other spoilers from the set. We'll get to all of that later in the video. We're going to talk first thing about the new die symbol entitled Indirect Damage. So here is what the die symbol looks like. Essentially, it looks like a thermal detonator, and there are some dice that'll have, like, it'll say 2 of this, so 2 indirect damage. And what indirect damage is you go to resolve it. You say, I'm resolving 2 indirect damage. Your opponent then gets to assign where that damage goes. So kind of like with the F-11D rifle and Palpatine's ability, they take that damage and they can assign it to whatever character or characters they have. So if I say I'm assigning 2 of this damage, they can say I'm going to put 1 here on this character and 1 on this character. There are some cards that will assign this kind of damage to yourself to allow you to do some kind of effect. Like there's a character that'll let you draw a card whenever you assign indirect damage to it. So we're going to get to those cards in just a moment. We're going to take a look at the starter sets in just a moment. We'll be right back with those. And the first of the new starter sets is a Luke Skywalker starter. So it looks like we have Luke Skywalker. Can't tell that vehicle. It looks like a Millennium Falcon maybe, and some kind of lightsaber. So it looks like 24 cards, 9 dice. To get everything, to get sets of like play sets, you'll probably still have to pick up 2 of them. So this is the first of the 2 new starters. We'll look at some of this stuff further in the video in greater detail. So we'll look at Luke a little bit later in the video, and some of the stuff in this set. We're going to take a quick look at the other starter set as well. We'll be right back with that. And the second starter set is a Boba Fett starter. Again, 24 cards, 9 dice. Looks like we get Boba Fett, a Stormtrooper, and a new version of Slave 1. So we'll be looking at Boba Fett and the Stormtrooper later. I don't believe Slave 1 was revealed today, so the only thing we have currently is this die side. So it looks like it at least has a 1 shield side. Not sure what else it has, so it looks like a red and yellow villain deck. And we're going to now jump into the spoilers. So we're going to look at the spoilers, and then we're also going to look at the plot cards. And I'll explain how the plots work a little bit later in the video. So we'll be right back with some of the other spoilers. So we're going to start off with cards from the villain starter set. So we have the veteran Stormtrooper, 9 health for 9 points. So a 1-to-1 ratio on points to health. 1 range damage, 2 range damage, 3 indirect damage, resource, and 2 blanks. And then no effects or abilities or anything like that. So all unmodified sides, no modifiers, no resource costs or anything like that. I'm actually liking this. So just like the First Order Stormtrooper, we have the 2 blanks, but we have 3 damage sides. And then again, that indirect damage, you resolve it for 3, and then your opponent will say, I'll put 2 damage here, 1 damage here. If they're playing a single character or if they are down to a single character, they'll probably have to assign all of that damage to that one character. So it is a good amount of damage. However, it's kind of out of your control when you resolve it, how it's going to be spread out. So if you're really trying to go after one character, your opponents may be like, I'll take all the indirect damage and put it on this other character that you haven't been targeting, or something like that. And then again, I'm pretty sure you won't be able to put more damage on a character than they can actually take with this indirect damage. So if I have a character that has 9 health out of 10, and somebody resolves this 3 indirect damage on them, I won't be able to take all that damage and put it all on one character. It'll be like 1 damage goes to that character, defeating it. The other 2 go to the other character. So again, this is the veteran Stormtrooper. I like it. So 3 damage sides, a 1, a 2, and 3 indirect. Resource, you can use it with logistics and things like that. And then a 1-to-1 ratio on health to points. That is the veteran Stormtrooper. We're going to move into our next card. So next up we have Boba Fett, Deadly Mercenary. This is the other character from the starter set. So we have 11 health for either 12 or 16 points, depending on depending if you want to run a single die or run him at elite. 2 range damage, 2 melee damage, disrupt, resource, special, and blank. And special is deal damage to a character equal to the value showing on a die, yours or an opponent's. So that's pretty cool. So your opponent might be like all focused to, let's say, focus this die to 3 damage. And then you can be like, I'm rolling, like, roll out Boba Fett. And if they haven't resolved that damage yet, you can be like, I'm going to use that, do damage to you based on the die that you just focused to. Or if you're running something with use the force, let's say you gave use the force ambush, flipped their die to a +3, and then had Boba on his special, you then deal 3 damage to that character. I can imagine this pairing well with a blue character for something like Force Throw. So let's say you roll the Force Throw special and Boba Fett special. You use Boba Fett special, dealing damage equal to the die to a character. Let's say they have 2 range damage showing. You deal 2 damage to them, and then you use Force Throw to throw the die at that character as well. 12-16 pairs well. He's going to pair with quite a few different characters. Really like that, especially if you run him at, you can run a single at 12 and run Aura Sing at 18. I'm currently running Django like that, so it looks like Boba's points also mirror Django's. So it's going to be pretty cool if you can run, let's say, run an elite Boba and a single Django. Run basically have 2 characters that have the same damage symbol. So Boba Fett has ranged and melee, as does Django. Django can, activate and roll out, and then Boba Fett has this these 2 damage sides, or these essentially 3 damage sides, considering his special. 11 health on top of that, so he has 1 more health than Django. I think this card's going to be pretty cool. I'm gonna definitely looking forward to getting it and tweaking it. I'm still hopeful that they'll release a legendary Boba Fett at some point that will just be like a even better version of this. I really like the special because you can resolve. You're not really resolving a character's die. It's kind of like Chewbacca. You are dealing damage based on a die and leaving it out. So you might want to flip a die to something that they can't use, something that either has a resource cost or is a modifier or something like that. Or even do this with, let's say you're running him with the mortar gun. Flip the mortar gun to the +3 side, use his special, deal 3 damage to a character, and then if that die is still in the pool, pay the resources, remove it, and hit everything for 3. That could be pretty cool as well. So that is Boba Fett Deadly Mercenary. We're going to move into our next card. I also like that they call it Deadly Mercenary, and Deadly is the name of one of the cards from Empire at War featuring Boba Fett. So next card coming right up. And next up we have Luke Skywalker, Unlikely Hero. This is the starter deck Luke Skywalker. So 11 points, either 11 or 14 points, depending if you want to run a single die or run him at elite. He has 1 range damage, 2 range damage, 1 melee damage, shield, resource, and blank, and has a new ability called a power action. So what a power action is, it's an action that you can use once per round. So once per round, if you're playing with this Luke, you can spend 2 resources to resolve one of this character's character or upgrade dice, increasing its value by 2. So his 2 range becomes 4 range, his 1 range becomes 3, his 1 melee becomes 3, and so on. And also any of his, if you have an upgrade on him, you'd be like, that upgrade is now going to go from 3 damage to 5 damage or something like that. So health, I think the health is good. Points are really good too. So you can pair him with quite a few different characters, even if you're running him at elite. 3 damage sides. Yeah, shield, has resources as well, and then has this pretty cool power action. Granted, this one does cost 2 resources to use, so one round you might spend getting him loaded up with like upgrades. Next round, roll him in, and then spend those 2 resources to reuse that power action to increase one of his character or upgrade dice by 2. So that is Luke Skywalker, Unlikely Hero. I think it's a pretty interesting card. So it has 3 damage sides and this cool ability, and then some other good utility stuff as well for shields and resources. So that is that card. We're going to move into our next card from the starter set. And next up we have Han Solo, Savvy Smuggler, 10 health, 11 or 14 points, which is really cool. So now we're going to be able to pair this Han at elite with an elite Chewbacca from Spirit of Rebellion. And also, I believe Leia is 16 points at elite from the Awakenings version. So now you'll be able to pair Han and Leia together at elite. So Han Solo Savvy Smuggler, 2 range damage for a resource, discard resource plus 1 resource and a blank. And after you activate this character, you may reroll a die, yours or an opponent's. So kind of like Jabba, how whenever you roll Jabba in, he gets to reroll a yellow die. This gets to reroll any die. So you can roll them in. Let's say you roll them in with ambush and you have 1 action left. You can roll him in and then reroll a die of yours and then resolve that die with the ambush action. So health, it's kind of weird that he's has always had 10. It's kind of interesting that Luke has 11. I think Han should maybe have 11 as well. Maybe that would be broken with having 2 11-point characters in the deck or in the set. But 2 damage sides and then 2 resource sides. So I really like that they're playing to his smuggler characteristic. So he's making money with his resource sides. He's also got the modified side as well to make additional money as well. And I like that you get that reroll action when you activate him. So 11-14, like I said, he'll pair with an elite Chewbacca, an elite Leia. Looks like you can pair him. He's 14 and Luke's 14. You can pair him with the elite Luke from the starter set as well. So some pretty cool stuff you can do here with this Han. So that is Han Solo Savvy Smuggler. Those are all the spoilers from the starter set. Now we're actually going to get into some of the other cards that have been spoiled in the main core set. So we're going to jump into those those cards next. So first up, we have Dr. Aphra Artifact Hunter. 10 health, 11 or 14 points if you want to run a single die or run her at elite. Villain, yellow legendary card. 11-14 again, so both Han and Luke had that 11-14, and so does she. So legendary, 2 damage for a resource, 2 indirect damage, 1 discard, 2 shields, 1 resource, 1 blank, and character Scoundrel. So it looks like they're doing these subtypes now. So I wonder if they're cards that'll say Scoundrels in play get +1 health or something like that. Kind of like in Magic, how you have tribal creatures that'll say other, like it'll say like all your merfolk get +1/+1. I don't know if that's coming possibly. It'd be kind of cool to say like, so you build a deck that's all Scoundrels and you get this card that gives all Scoundrels this kind of bonus. That would be kind of cool. But ability, so the cost of the first droid you play each round is decreased by 1. So your support droids, if it costs 1, you get it out for free. It decreases the cost of the first droid you play each round by 1. And then after you deal indirect damage to yourself, you may draw a card. There are cards coming up that we're going to discuss that says something like deal indirect damage to one of your characters to do something. So whenever she takes indirect damage that is dealt by you, or I think this is how it works. I don't think if I assign indirect damage from an opponent's die, I don't think that counts as being dealt to yourself. We'll have to wait and see if there's any clarification on that. But I think if you use one of these cards that deals indirect damage to yourself, then you get to use this effect. So her effect is draw a card. And we'll get to those cards in a little bit later in the video. But so far I'm liking it. Essentially two damage sides. 1 is a pay side. So I think she's going to be more of a support character. I don't think she's really going to be your main damage dealer, considering that her base damage, her range damage, you will have to pay for, unless you have ways to say, resolve it for free or anything, or decrease the cost of it by 1, and so on. But if you also, she's going to be running, you're going to be running droids of her because droids will cost you 1 less resource. And then this is the character that you're not going to be shy about dealing indirect damage to, at least if you're playing cards that deal indirect damage to her, because now, once you do that, you get to draw a card. So, pretty cool card advantage technique. It kind of reminds me of Enrage, where you deal 1 damage to one of your characters to get a resource. So, that is Dr. Aphra. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have BT1. Villain yellow support droid, 2 resources, 1 melee, 3 melee for a resource, 1 indirect damage, 2 indirect damage, disrupt, and blank. And after you activate the support, deal 1 indirect damage to yourself, then deal 1 indirect damage to an opponent. So if you're playing this with Dr. Aphra, you can roll out the droid, hit her for 1 indirect damage, draw a card off of her ability, and then hit your opponent for 1 indirect damage as well. And again, if you're playing this droid with Dr. Aphra, you can get it out for 1 resource if it's the first droid you play. So let's look at his sides. So looks like 4 damage sides, so pretty good damage sides right there. 1 melee, Again, 3 for a resource, and then 2 sides with indirect damage. Now, indirect damage is, it's still damage, but your opponent gets to spread it however they want. So you don't really have control of where it goes. So that's kind of the downside to the indirect damage. I'm really looking forward to trying and messing around with this indirect damage mechanic. It sounds interesting, especially if there's cards that will deal it to yourself and then you get an effect, like with Aphra, you get to draw a card. So this droid's pretty cool. Has, again, 4 damage sides and a disrupt, and you deal 1 indirect damage to yourself when you roll him, and then you get to hit your opponent for 1 as well. And then if you have any other characters that say when this character takes indirect damage, do this effect. So that is BT1. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have ObiWan Kenobi Jedi Master. So Obi-Wan from, looks like episode 2 or episode 3. 12 health, 15 or 19 points, depending on how you want to run him. 3 melee damage. Good base damage side right there. 3 melee damage for a resource. Shield, resource, and blank. And after you activate this character, you may give a character 1 shield. So roll them in, character gets a shield. Don't know if this is going to be playable really with Qui-Gon. It would be interesting to have it probably be single Qui-Gon, single Obi-Wan. But you roll in Obi-Wan, give Qui-Gon a shield, and then if Qui-Gon already has a shield, you get to use his ability to deal damage. So 12 health, that's pretty good. 15, 19, it's a little bit high, but you could definitely pair him with, even at Elite, some lower costed characters, like maybe like a Maz. You'd be able to use Elite Maz. You could use something like a single die Kanan, maybe. Things like that. Looks like you could probably use like the old Rey, like a single die of her, possibly. And a few others. So it looks like, yeah, so 2 damage sides, 2 shield sides, resource side. I think the health is good. And then the damage sides are good, even though one of them is a 3 cost. However, if you pair Obi-Wan with a red character, you can throw on an Electro Staff on Obi-Wan and make that 3 melee damage side, that second damage side, not cost anything if you resolve it with one of the modifiers on Electro Staff. So maybe some kind of red-blue deck. Maybe Obi-Wan and Rebel Trooper or something like that. So that's 19. And the Rebel Trooper is 8. So 20, 21, 22, 24, 27. You then have 3 points left over. And again, I'm getting to those plots because the plots have to do with how many points you have left over after building your team. So that is Obi-Wan Kenobi Jedi Master. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber, Hero Blue Legendary, 3 resources, blue character only, 2 melee, plus 3 melee, 2 shields, special, and blank. And special is give the attached character 1 shield, then deal unblockable damage to a character equal to the number of shields on the attached character. That's really cool. This is definitely, I want to get 2 of this and run this in my Qui-Gon, like a Qui-Gon Rey deck or a Qui-Gon Ahsoka deck that I've been messing around with. So you put this on Obi-Wan, or on Qui-Gon, sorry. Obi-Wan's lightsaber on Qui-Gon. You resolve the special. You give Qui-Gon a shield. You then do his shield damage trick. You then deal damage equal to the number of shields on Qui-Gon. So if Qui-Gon has 3 shields, it's 3 damage. Essentially, it's like a riposte without actually having to remove the shield, which is pretty cool. So really cool special. Also love the fact that it has two shield sides as well. So you can definitely load a character up with shields and then possibly resolve the special on this. Or if you're doing something like a blue-yellow deck, you can throw on Mandalorian armor, give the character a shield. Now the character can hold up to 4 shields. So you then can, if you use the special, you're going to be doing 4 damage. This is definitely a really cool legendary. Especially if you're going to play a blue deck now, you can include something like Reaping the Crystal to get this out for 2 resources. Again, essentially 3 damage sides, depending if you have shield. So you have the 2 melee sides, the normal and the plus 3 modifier, as well as the special. So it looks like the special is going to do at least 1 unblockable damage, guaranteed, because you're giving a character at least 1 shield. So if you have no shield on the character, they get a shield and deal 1 unblockable damage. If they're loaded up, they can either do 3 or 4 damage, depending if they're running something like Mandalorian armor. So really cool legendary. Really looking forward to getting this for my Qui-Gon deck, and just loading Qui-Gon up with shields and then just hitting them for a bunch of unblockable damage with the shields, as well as like vibro knife damage and stuff like that, which makes the melee damage unblockable anyway. So that's Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Wedge Antilles Squad Leader. 11 health, 11 or 15 points if you want to run him at a single or an elite. So you have a 1-to-1 ratio on his single die version. Um, two, um, 2 indirect damage, plus 3 indirect damage, disrupt, shield, resource, and blank, and also has a power action. So turn one of your vehicle dice to any side. Use each power action only once per round. So the Luke Skywalker card from earlier has a power action. However, it doesn't mention this use it once per round thing here. So 11 health for a pilot is pretty good. 2 damage sides, essentially. All indirect though, so I think indirect damage is going to play well again against like Palpatine decks because they have no other character to distribute it to if they're running Elite Palpatine. It'll do a little bit less with 3 or 4 character decks because they have more options to spread it. But I do like that fact that I can have, let's say I roll out Wedge, have him on his 2 indirect and a 3 indirect. That's then 5 indirect damage, which is a lot, even if they are spreading it between multiple characters. Point value I think is good, especially if you run him with another character that maybe has some normal damage, maybe like a Hera Wedge deck or something like that, because they can both run at elite, and then you can drop vehicles for free with Hera using Wedge, roll it in, use Wedge's power action, turn it to a side, resolve it, and then potentially ready it again with some other card effect like strategic planning, and roll that vehicle out again. So that is Wedge Antilles. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have the Resistance Bomber support vehicle. Hero support vehicle, 3 resources, 3 indirect damage, 3 indirect damage, 6 indirect damage for 2 resources, 2 disrupt, and 2 blanks. And after this die is resolved, place 1 damage on the support. Discard the support, discard it if it has 3 or more damage on it. So essentially, you get 3 resolutions of its die, and then it gets discarded. So that's obviously a major downside to dies. The cost is good because it's 3 resources for quite a bit of indirect damage and possible disrupt. However, once it gets resolved, you put a counter on there, and then once you do that for the 3rd time, it gets discarded. My initial thought was this would be drop this with Hera, throw this in a deck like a support deck with Hera, throw it out for free, resolve it once, reactivate it somehow with strategic planning. You probably don't want to reckless reentry this because it has the 2 blanks and it has a possibility of getting discarded if you reckless reentry and roll a blank. But do it something with like strategic planning, reset it, roll it again, resolve it again. End of the round, it goes to the end of the round. You return it to your hand. So it only has 2 damage on it. It returns to your hand. Damage should fall off it at that point because it's not in play anymore. And then you somehow focus or roll Hera into her special again in the next round, drop the Resistance Bomber, do resolve it again twice somehow with like something like strategic planning or anything else that lets you reset it. Then resolve it again, bounce it to your hand before you put that 3rd damage counter on it, so it constantly just resets itself once it gets returned to your hand using Hera's special. So Resistance Bomber, really looking forward to getting this when for building a Hera deck because I like the ability that Hera will then bounce the vehicle back to your hand, essentially resetting it, playing it again the next round, getting it out, using it twice, bouncing it again, and just repeating that throughout the entire game, doing a potential amount of this indirect damage. So we have the 3, the 3, and the 6 or 2 resources. So that's a Resistance Bomber. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Delve, Yellow Villain Event, 3 resources, deal 1 indirect damage to yourself to play a support or upgrade from your hand for free. Again, this features Dr. Aphra as well as a quote from her as well. So if you play this on Dr. Aphra, you get to play a support or upgrade from your hand for free, and then her ability also triggers if you do the damage to her, you get to also draw a card. 3 resources, kind of expensive, but essentially you can look at it as paying 3 resources for something like an ATST or like a really big support could be good. Also, if you're able to drop the cost of this event somehow, or maybe even just play it for free, you then get to deal 1 indirect damage to her, draw a card, and then you can play a support or upgrade for free. So like something like a huge, like an ATST, maybe a 4-cost upgrade, or something like that. So that is Delve. It's pretty interesting, especially with the idea of dealing indirect damage to yourself to pull off an effect like this. And then again, if you combo it with Aphra, you get that card draw as well. So that is Delve. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Bubble Shield, 1 resource, support. You may distribute indirect damage to the support as if it were a character with 3 health. Discard the support if it has 3 or more damage on it. So if you can have a Bubble Shield out, essentially it will redirect damage to it. So if somebody is like says resolve 2 indirect damage, I can resolve those 2 damage on the shield, and then later in the round, maybe later in the game, they resolve 1 more. I put it on here, and then I can pop it, and it will go away. The support goes away after it takes 3 damage. So it's a way to divert this indirect damage from your characters to this support. So we got a Droidica on the artwork, and this is neutral, so red neutral support. So basically, it'll take 3 damage, and then you get rid of it. Kind of like not like really like a Force Illusion, but some kind of damage blocker. And then once you do that, you discard the support. If you have a way to get the support back, it's a nice way to essentially keep indirect damage off of your characters and just stack the damage on this card. So that is a Bubble Shield. We're going to move into our next card. And next up, we have Espionage. This is a plot card. So this is a new card type to the next this core set. What plots do is, from the article, is any leftover points you have from when you're building your characters. So let's say you built a 29-point team, you can then have a 1-point plot in play in the beginning of the game. So if I have 29 points, I can have this, for example, this espionage plot in the game, and it says after setup, discard a top card from each deck. So I discard a card, they discard a card. Could work well in a mill deck because you're already starting off by milling them. However, it might come back and bite you because you might mill off a good card. But what this does, it essentially lets you use those leftover points from your building to enact or play these plot cards, which have effects that begin at the beginning of the game. So according to the article, bring it up here, it says, since the beginning of Star Wars Destiny, points for deck building have resided purely on characters. With a 30-point limit, any team that added up to less than that was playing with a disadvantage, resulting in little motivation to play a 29 or 28-point team. Legacies looks to expand on deck building opportunities with new plot cards. At the start of a game, you may choose a single plot card to give you an advantage at the start of the game in exchange for your deck building points. So whatever points you have left over can be used on these plots. So this is Espionage. So after setup, discard a top card from each deck. Pretty simple. We're going to look at the next plot card in just a moment. We'll be right back with that. And next plot card is Profitable Connection. And one thing I didn't mention in the previous plot card is that card and at least this card are neutral. I'm sure there'll be plot cards that are specific to hero, plot cards that are specific to villain, and so on. But Profitable Connection, you start the game with an additional resource. So 1 extra resource. And I imagine if you're playing as Lando in the artwork here, if you have Lando in play and this in play, you will start the game with 1 additional resource from the plot, 1 additional resource for Profitable Connection, and then 1 additional resource through Lando's ability, where you start the game with an extra resource. So you can potentially start off the game with 4 resources and drop something like a 1 of the Force on turn 1, or any other 4-cost upgrade. So these plots, and this is a 3-point plot. So if you have a 27-point team, you can use this plot, or 27 or less, I should say. So a 3-point plot. I don't know if you're allowed to use multiple plots. I think I believe you can just select 1. Because let's see, choose a single plot card. So looks like the plots you can only use, you have to choose 1 to use. So with this, you need a 27-point team. You then have this plot making up those extra 3 points, and then you get the effect of whatever the plot is. So I think these plots are going to add a lot of interesting dynamics to deck building, where currently people have just tried to essentially maximize the number of points. They really want to get close to 30. Sometimes they get to 29 or 28, and they have 2 extra points they can't do anything with. Maybe people will now be like, okay, that's a 9-point character. Maybe I'll go with an 8-point character for my 3rd character, so I have access to one of these 1 or 2-point plot cards. And there'll definitely be more plot cards being spoiled. I don't know if they're all going to be uncommon. The first 2 that they've revealed today have been on the uncommon level, but I'm not sure if there'll be a plot that is maybe common, or maybe even a rare plot that says, if you have this plot, roll this die in, and then resolve it and set it aside, or something like that. That would be pretty interesting too. So that is all the cards that were spoiled today from the Star Wars Destiny Legacies core set announcement. So again, we had two new starter sets, Luke and Boba Fett. We have these new plot cards that we just discussed, as well as this new indirect damage mechanic, which looks very interesting. So that's going to do it for today's video. There'll be more Destiny videos as more cards get revealed for this next set. Until next time, remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.